welcome back to my channel. In today's channel I'm going to be dealing with a theory topic, Adam's clasp. Adam's clasp demo is been given, but before that they ask you to read the theory of Adam's clasp, and also Adam's clasp has been asked in the exams as well. So we will start with Adam's clasp. Adam's clasp was first described by the Professor Philip Adams. Okay, so the professor who discovered Adam's clasp was Philip Adams. It was also known as the Liverpool clasp, the universal clasp, and the modified arrowhead clasp. Okay, so what are the three names of the arrowhead clasps? It is the modified arrowhead clasp, universal clasp, and Liverpool clasp. So these are the three synonyms of the Adams clasp. Okay, when properly constructed, this clasp offers maximum retention. Okay, so this clasp offers maximum retention when it is properly constructed. Okay, the clasp is constructed using a 0.7 mm wire. So 0.7 mm wire is used for the construction of this Adams clasp. Okay, which is hard round stainless steel wire. Okay, now Adams clasp is made of the following parts. Now we're going to see the parts of the Adams clasp. Okay, so the first part is the two arrowheads. So now here I have a diagram in which you can see the Adams clasp. Okay, you have a bridge. This part is called the bridge of the Adams clasp, and the two arrowheads are right here. Okay, arrowheads and two retentive arms. These are the two retentive arms. Okay, so what are the parts of an Adams clasp? It is a bridge. It is having two arrowheads and two retentive arms. Okay, the two arrowheads engage the mesial and the distal proximal undercuts. The two arrowheads engage the mesial and the distal proximal undercuts. Okay, the arrowheads are connected to each other by a bridge. So can you see the arrowheads are connected to each other by a bridge? This bridge, which is at a 45-degree angle to the long axis of the tooth. So if you see from here, this is the tooth and this is the bridge. This bridge is at a 45-degree angle to the tooth. Let's just say this is the tooth surface, this is the bridge, and this has a 45-degree angle. Okay, now the two arrowheads engage the mesial and distal proximal undercuts. The two arrowheads are connected to each other by a bridge which is at a 45-degree angle to the long axis of the tooth. Now the Adams clasp offers a number of advantages. So now we're going to talk about the advantages of the Adams clasp. The first advantage is it is rigid and it offers excellent retention. Okay, it is rigid and it offers excellent retention. So the first advantage is it is rigid and it offers excellent retention. Now second is it can be fabricated on deciduous as well as permanent teeth. Okay, so the first advantage is it is rigid, second advantage is it has good retention, third advantage is it can be fabricated on both deciduous, that is your primary, and permanent teeth as well. Okay, now the third advantage or the fourth advantage is they can be used on partially or fully erupted tooth. Okay, if the tooth is partially erupting in the oral cavity or it is fully erupted in the oral cavity, both ways these clasps can be used. Okay, and it can be used on molars, premolars, and on incisors. Okay, no specialized instrument is needed to fabricate the clasp. Young's universal plier is used for most routine wire bending. That can also be used to fabricate Adams clasp. Okay, it is small and occupies minimum space. Okay, and the clasp can be modified into a number of ways. After that, now we will read the modifications, but before that we will revise the advantages of Adams clasps once. First, it has good retention, and second is it has good rigidity. Third is it can be fabricated on a deciduous as well as a permanent tooth. Okay, and they can be fabricated on partially erupted or fully erupted tooth. Okay, then it can be used on the molars, premolars, and incisors. Okay, and no specific instruments are needed. They can be used on the Young's plier as well. They can be made using the Young's universal pliers as well, and they're very small and they occupy minimum space. Okay, now we go forward with the modifications of the Adams clasp. Now we're going to start with the modifications of the Adams clasps, but before that I want you all to see that this is the bridge and this is the tooth surface, and here is the 45-degree angle that I have been talking about. So the bridge makes a 45-degree angle with the tooth surface. Okay, now Adams clasp with single arrowhead. Okay, the Adams clasp can be modified to have a single arrowhead. Okay, it can have a single arrowhead, or this type of clasp is indicated in partially erupted tooth, which is usually the last erupted molar. Okay, the single arrowhead is made to engage mesioproximal undercut. Okay, so the first the first modification in the Adams is the Adams with single arrowhead. Okay, the Adams clasp can be modified to have a single arrowhead. So basically it has just a single arrowhead, and it is made to engage the mesioproximal undercut of the last erupted molar. Okay, mesioproximal undercut of the last erupted molar. Okay, the bridge is modified to encircle the tooth. The bridge which is modified to encircle the tooth. Okay, and distally, to encircle the tooth distally and end on the palatal aspect as a retentive arm. Okay, so this is not a modified arrowhead, but I'm trying to explain you that the bridge encircles the tooth and ends on the distal side of the palate as a retentive arm. Okay, now the next one is the Adams with a J hook. Adams with a J hook can be soldered onto the bridge of Adams clasp. Okay, so the Adams with a J hook can be soldered on the bridge of the Adams clasp. Okay, so if I have a picture, I might show you how it looks. Okay, so this one is, if you closely see here, that the J hook is soldered on the bridge of the Adams clasp. So this is the J hook modification of the Adams clasp. Okay, so the Adams clasp with a J hook is, the J is soldered on the bridge of the Adams clasp. These hooks are useful in engaging elastics. Okay, now the Adams clasp with incorporated helix. Now the Adams clasp with incorporated helix. Now the helix can be incorporated into the bridge. Okay, the helix can be incorporated into the bridge of the Adams clasp. Okay, same way the helix can be incorporated onto the bridge of the Adams clasp. Okay, now this helix also helps in engaging the elastics. Okay, now next is the Adams with an additional arrowhead. So the Adams with an additional arrowhead, if you see this closely, you have the Adams. Now to the bridge we are attaching an additional arrowhead over here. If you see, we're attaching an additional arrowhead to the existing Adams. So that is nothing but Adams with an additional arrowhead. Adams clasps can be constructed with an additional arrowhead. The additional arrowhead engages the proximal undercut of the adjacent tooth. Now if you see, the proximal undercut of the adjacent tooth has been engaged by this Adams clasp. Okay, and soldered. Okay, this type of clasp offers additional retention. This is again for additional retention. Now next is the Adams with soldered buckle tube. Same way how we soldered the J hook, this that very similar way a buckle tube is soldered into the Adams clasp. Okay, if you see, this is the buckle tube that has been soldered into the Adams clasp. Okay, now a buckle tube can be soldered on the bridge of the Adams clasp. This modification permits the use of the extraoral anchorage using face bow headgear assembly. So this buckle tube right here is for the anchorage of the extraoral face bow. Okay, now moving forward with the next modification, that is Adams with a distal extension. If you see here, Adams is having a distal extension. This is the distal side of the palate, mesial side, distal side. So the distal extension of the Adams clasp is known as the Adams with a distal extension. The Adams clasp can be modified so that the distal arrowhead has a small extension incorporated distally. This distal extension helps in engaging the elastics. Again, same way, the functions of the modifications are very similar to each other. Here and there, 2 or 3 functions might change, but mostly they are for the engaging. They are there for engaging the elastics and for the extra retention. Okay, only what you have to remember is the Adams with soldered buckle tube is for the extraoral anchorage. Okay, now last one is the Adams on incisors and premolars. So the Adams for anteriors, not exactly anteriors, it includes your premolars as well. So this one, yeah, if you can see that this is your Adams on incisors. Okay, so the Adams on incisors can be fabricated when retention in those areas is required. They can be constructed to span a single tooth or 2 tooths. Okay, if you can see that this is the Adams for the incisors, where we are engaging 2 tooths for retention. Okay, so that's all for Adams clasps. Once I will revise the whole thing. So Adams clasp, the names of Adams clasps are like the synonyms is Liverpool Adams clasps and universal clasps and modified arrowhead clasps. So you have to remember the 3 names, that is the Liverpool, universal and modified arrowhead. These are the 3 synonyms for Adams clasps. Further, you have your arrowheads. Now these are the parts of the Adams clasp. First part is the arrowhead, second part is the bridge, and third part is the 2 retentive arms. If you don't remember it, just look at the diagram, look at the clasp, you will come to know that these are the 2 arrowheads, this is the retentive arms, and this is the bridge. So there are the 3 parts: arrowhead, bridge, and the retentive arms. After that, you have to tell the advantages of the Adams clasp. It can be used for excellent retention, it has good rigidity, it can be fabricated on both primary and permanent tooth, it can be used in partially or fully erupted tooth, and it can be used on molars, premolars, and incisors. It does not require any special instruments. You can use it with your Young's plier. You can make it with your Young's plier, and it is small and occupies very less space, and these are the advantages. Now coming to the modifications, again it can be modified into many different ways to increase its functions. Okay, so the first, mainly to increase its retention, we modify it. So the modifications are totally, there are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 modifications, and the first one is the single arrowhead, so the Adams with single arrowhead, and second one is the Adams with an additional arrowhead. Here you have one arrowhead. Here you have 3 arrowheads, that is you're having an additional arrowhead. And then coming to the arrowhead Adams with J hook, where the J is soldered. So the use of the Adams with single arrowhead and the additional arrowhead is usually for the retention purposes, and the Adams with J hook is for engaging the elastics. Same way, the Adams with helix is also for engaging the elastics, and the Adams with the buccal tube, this only has a different function, that is for extra oral anchorage. Okay, now Adams with the distal extension is again for engaging elastics. The Adams with incisors and premolars is for retention in those areas. Okay, now that's all for Adams clasp. I hope you liked my Adams clasps session. And if you are looking forward for more such videos, subscribe to my channel and please hit the bell icon, and please do leave a comment so that I can improve my teaching. And if you really like my video, please let me know, and if you don't like, I will change my style. Please let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching.